Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what humans do with data and how they use it to form beliefs. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to do a little experiment with everyone here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 numbers, and what you need to do is you need to figure out the rule that I used to generate those numbers. But for now, just keep it in your mind, so don't say anything. So my numbers are 2, 4, and 6. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to give me 3 numbers, and I will tell you if those numbers fit my rule or do not fit my rule, and then I will let you guess the rule, okay? And if you've heard about this experiment, then don't participate. Okay, I'm going to start with you. You have to give me 3 numbers, and I'll tell you if it fits the rule or not, and then let you guess.
369.
369 fits my rule. Do you want to guess the rule?
Not yet. I'm a lawyer.
Just you know, just. Just any kind of guess. We're not going to count it against to you.
Increasing by the difference between each?
No, good guess. Okay. Can you give me 3 numbers?
I was going to say 369, so I'll say 4812.
4812, yes, it fits. Do you want to guess the rule?
That it's about a times table sequence.
Is what? That's an interesting.
Times table sequence.
A times table sequence. No, not quite. And the very last one, I'll let anyone wants to volunteer because they probably know. Here you go.
10, 16, 26.
Yes, and do you want to say what the rule is?
Which number is the sum of the previous 2?
No. Okay. So. Okay. So my rule was simply escalating numbers. So 3, 5, 100 would be a yes. 5, 0, 1 would be a no. But what was the point of this experiment? The point of this experiment is to show you that based on a very limited set of data, we quickly form beliefs in our head. And then what we tend to do is we tend to go out and try to confirm those beliefs. And rarely do we try to challenge them. So for example, if your belief was that my rule was escalating even numbers, you may have said 8, 10, 12, and I would say, yes, it fits it. But what people do not tend to do is challenge. So they wouldn't say 3, 5, 7. If they said 3, 5, 7, I would say, yes, that fits my rule as well. And then they would know that their belief was not right and get to the truth quicker. And so this demonstration of what's known as a confirmation bias was first shown by Peter Wason in 1960. Peter was an academic in my own department at UCL. And the reason this experiment is so important is not about numbers. The reason it's important is because we all have a range of beliefs in our head, right? We have beliefs about gender, we have theories about science, about ourselves and our friends and our relationships and our family and how things should work in our industry or in our company. And what we tend to do every day without even noticing it is we tend to go out and try to confirm those beliefs. And again, rarely do we try to challenge them. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to see whether we can change people's beliefs about climate change with information. And we tried to see if we can change people's beliefs, not only those who are skeptic, but also those that do believe in climate change. Can we change their beliefs with information? The first thing we did is we asked everyone, do you believe in man-made climate change? Do you support the Paris Agreement? And based on their answers, we divided them into the weak believers and the strong believers. And then we asked them to estimate how much they think the temperature would rise in the next 100 years. So they gave us the estimates, and unsurprisingly, the weak believers gave an estimate that was slightly lower than the strong believers. Then came the real test. We told half of our participants that the scientists have reevaluated the data and have now concluded that actually things are not as bad as they thought, and temperature would rise by only a little amount. We told the other half of the participants that the scientists have reevaluated the data and have now concluded that things are much, much worse than they previously thought, and the temperature would rise by a very, very significant amount. And please, everyone, give us your new estimate. The question was whether people will take the information that we gave them to change their beliefs. And indeed they did, but mostly when the information we gave them fit their original point of view. So when the weak believers heard that the scientists are now saying, you know, it's not that bad, we made a mistake, they moved a lot in that direction. but they didn't budge when we told them that the scientists are now saying that things are even more dire than they originally thought. The strong believers showed the opposite pattern. So when they heard that the scientists are now saying things are much, much worse than we thought, they moved a lot in that direction, but they didn't move when we told them scientists are actually thinking it's not as bad as originally assumed. So when we give people information, they tend to take in the information that fits their original point of view, but look at counter-evidence with a critical eye. Again, this is a demonstration of the confirmation bias. So the confirmation bias is not new. But today, when we have so much information available to us, it causes groups to go into different directions. So it causes polarization rather than bringing people together. So we wanted to know what goes on inside the human brain when you encounter an opinion that does not fit your own. So we conducted a study where we brought pairs of individuals into the lab, and we asked them to make financial decisions together. Specifically, they had to assess real estate. While they were doing that, we scanned their brain activity in 2 separate scanners, but they can communicate over the internet. What we found was when 2 people agreed, each person's brain showed precise encoding of the information coming from the agreeing partner. And everyone became more confident in their original belief. But when 2 people disagreed, metaphorically speaking, it looked like the brain was shutting down, and it wasn't encoding the information that was coming from the disagreeing partner. And what happened to people's confidence in their own opinion? It didn't change much. There's a slight decrease, but not significant. So when people see this, they usually ask, well, is this true for everyone? Are there individual differences? Well, if you see yourself as highly analytical, which I think a lot of us do, embrace yourself. So a study conducted at Yale University by Dan Kahan showed that people with better analytical skills are more likely to twist data at will. So in this study, the first thing they did is they gave 1,000 Americans math tests and analytical tests. And based on the results of those exams, they divided them into those with high skills, math and analytical skills, and those with low skills. And then they gave them 2 sets of data. One set of data, they said, is looking at whether skin treatment is helping skin rashes. Please look at the data, analyze the data, and tell us what you think. Well, unsurprisingly, those with better math skills did better at this job. Then they gave them another set of data. This set of data, they told them, was looking at whether gun control laws are reducing crime. Look at the data, analyze the data, and tell us whether these gun control laws are reducing crime. So the difference here is that everyone has very strong opinions about gun control laws. And those strong opinions interfered with their ability to analyze the data. And this was especially the case with those with high analytical skills. They did worse at this job. So it seems as if people were using their skills not necessarily to reach the most accurate conclusion, but rather to find fault with data that they weren't happy with. So the question is, why has a human brain evolved to discard perfectly good information when it doesn't fit our original point of view? Well, the brain evaluates a piece of evidence in light of the knowledge that it already stores, because on average, that is in fact the correct approach. So if I were to tell you that I saw a pink elephant flying in the sky, you would assume that I was delusional or lying, as you should. When a new piece of evidence doesn't fit a belief that we hold strongly, on average, that piece of evidence is incorrect. So the further away a new piece of evidence is from our current belief, the less likely it is to change it. And that's not an irrational way to form beliefs, but it does mean that strongly held beliefs are very hard to change, even if they are false. There is one exception, though. That is when the new piece of evidence doesn't fit what we believe, but it fits what we want to believe. So let me give you an example. In August 2016, so a few months before the presidential election, a group of researchers here in the UK asked 1,000 Americans to tell them who they wanted to win the elections and who they predicted would win the elections. So back in August, about half of the participants wanted Trump to win and half wanted Clinton to win. But back in August, most of the participants, both the Clinton supporters and the Trump supporters, believed that Clinton was about to win. Then they gave them a new poll, and they said the poll suggests a Trump victory. So please tell us again, who do you think is going to win? And the question was whether they would take this new evidence to change their beliefs. And the answer was yes, but mostly it changed the predictions of the Trump supporters. They were elated by this new poll, and they were quick to say, well, maybe he will win after all. The Clinton supporters, on the other hand, said, well, you know, we don't really trust this poll, and they didn't change their predictions that much. So when we get some evidence that is contrary to what we want to believe, our immediate reaction is this: denial, rationalization, and trying to distance ourselves from the facts. And maybe the best way to do that is by not exposing ourselves to the facts to begin with. So let's take the stock market as an example. You know, when people check on their bank accounts to look at their stocks without any intention of making a transaction, just having a little peek. So this is a study by Carlson, Lowenstein, and Seppi. And what you're looking at here in black is the S&P 500 over 2 years. And in gray is a number of times that people logged into their account to check on their stocks. So what do we see? When the market is going up, people are more likely to check on their stocks. When the market is going down, they are less likely to do so. So when it's going up, they assume my stocks have gone up and they want a sniff of the good news. But when the market is going down, they assume I've lost money and they don't want to know. And all this is true as long as negative information can reasonably be avoided. So what you don't see here is what happened a few months later in the financial collapse of 2008 when the market went drastically down, and that's when people started logging in frantically, but it was a little bit too late. And so what we perceive and the evidence that we have does not really fit. So we perceive what we want to perceive regardless of the information in front of us. Now, our mistake as advisors, as communicators, as parents, as employers, is that we try to put a clear mirror in front of people. We try to say, you're wrong, I'm right, and here's all the information and the evidence suggesting that I'm right and you're wrong. And it doesn't really work because the brain will frantically try to distort the image until it gets the picture that it's happy with. But what will happen if we went along with how the brain works, not against it? These biases that we have and how we process information have evolved over millions of years. They're very hard to change, if not impossible. But we can go along with these biases in information processing to change beliefs. So I'm just going to give you one example of how to do that. And this example relies on the information that I just gave you, which is that when we encounter evidence that doesn't fit our beliefs, we tend to ignore it, right? But the brain does a very good job at taking in information from an agreeing partner. And so what that means is that to change minds, we should really start with common beliefs and common motivations. And let me give you an example. So parents who decide they do not want to vaccinate their kids, when they hear that there's all this evidence suggesting that there isn't a link between childhood vaccines and autism, they're not usually convinced. And that is the approach of health professionals. But studies show it doesn't have much of an effect when people already made up their mind. So a group at UCLA tried a different approach. They said, well, perhaps we can get to the same outcome, which is having parents vaccinate their kids, but without concentrating on what we disagree on. Maybe we can focus on what we agree on instead. So what they did was they highlighted the fact that these vaccines protect kids from potentially deadly diseases, measles, mumps, or rubella. The parents didn't disagree with that, but it was something that was forgotten in the heat of the debate. And by focusing on a belief that they had in common and a motivation that they had in common, keeping the kids healthy, they were able to change parents' intentions of vaccinating the kids 3 times as much as a normal approach. So the point of this is that we're not always aware of how our brain works. We're not aware of these biases that we have and how we process information. But if we become aware of these biases, then first of all, we become more conscientious of our own decisions and our beliefs. But also, if we understand how the brains around us work, that means that we become better at communicating information and advice to others. Thank you.